The hum of the rover's engine was the only sound for 100 kilometers. Li Jun liked it that way. The console glowed with soft blues and greens, painting her face in the dim light of the cabin. Outside, the vast, violet forests of Lyra Beta 3 streamed past under a sky streaked with the orange and pink bands of the gas giant it orbited. It was beautiful in a lonely sort of way. June was a xenogeologist. Her job was to be alone. Her current mission was a standard 3-week mineral survey for the Frontier Science Commission. She had been on the moon for 2 days. Her life was a cycle of driving, stopping, taking core samples, analyzing data, and sleeping. It was methodical. It was quiet. It suited her just fine. She brought the rover to a stop at the edge of a rocky overlook, the vehicle tilting slightly. Time for sample site Gamma 7. She pulled on her environment suit, the familiar hiss of the seal a comforting sound. The helmet display flickered to life, showing her oxygen levels and external temperature. Cold, but survivable. The atmosphere was thin and had a bit too much argon for comfort, but it beat being cooped up in the rover all day. Stepping onto the rust-colored soil, she took a moment. The silence here was different. It was a physical thing pressing against her suit. Giant, fan-like trees with silver bark stretched towards the sky. She pulled her core drill from the rover's storage compartment and got to work. The mechanical whirring was a violent intrusion in the quiet. She focused on the readings, noting sediment layers. Nothing special. Just more of the same iron-rich clay and silicate deposits. Back inside the rover an hour later, she stowed the sample tube. She pulled off her helmet, ran a hand through her short, dark hair, and took a long drink of water from her bottle. The console chronometer told her it was time to move to the next planned site. She started the engine and turned the vehicle north, following the pre-plotted path on her navigation screen. The routine was everything. It was a shield against the vast emptiness of space. She thought of her small apartment on the human outpost, 3 jumps away. She thought of the conversation she'd had with Mission Controller Kim Min-soo before she left. His calm, professional voice. Stick to the survey grid, June. No deviations. The weather patterns on Lyra Beta are stable, but the terrain isn't. Call in every 48 hours. Simple and safe. She was good at simple and safe. Which is why the sound from the comms panel was so jarring. It wasn't for her. It was a ping on the broad-spectrum monitoring channel, a frequency the rover scanned automatically but she never paid attention to. It usually picked up cosmic background noise or the occasional burst of static from the gas giant's magnetosphere. This was different. A slow, repeating pulse. 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. It was faint, crackling with interference, but the pattern was unmistakable. It was a distress signal, and it wasn't a human sequence. June froze, her hands on the controls. Her first instinct was protocol. Note the coordinates, immediately relay them to Outpost Command, and continue her mission. Her finger hovered over the comm link to Min-soo. But the signal pulsed again. 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. A loop of silent desperation. Her eyes went to the coordinates blinking on the secondary screen. The origin point was 12 kilometers to the east, well outside her survey grid. It was in a direction marked on her map with topographical warnings. Severe canyon networks. Recommended for aerial survey only. She bit her lip. Continuing her route was the smart thing. The safe thing. It was what Min-soo would tell her to do. A distress signal, especially a non-human one, could mean anything. Could be an old probe. Could be a trap set by scavengers. It could be a problem so big her little rover and her geology tools couldn't possibly fix it. The signal repeated with a sigh that fogged the inside of her visor for a second. She made a decision. She would take a look. Just a quick, cautious look. If it was a wreck, maybe there was salvageable tech. The Commission always appreciated extra data. That was her justification. It felt thin. Even to her, she turned the rover east, leaving the solid ground of her planned route and steering towards the jagged lines on her map. The forest grew denser, the fan trees pressing closer. The rover's heavy wheels crushed through brittle undergrowth. The smooth ride became a lurching, bumping journey. She had to slow down to navigate around massive, moss-covered boulders. The terrain began to slope downward. She was entering the canyon system. The signal grew stronger, the pings coming more frequently. Her scanner started to resolve it. It wasn't just a beacon. There was a metallic mass there, and it was big. The composition didn't match any human alloys in her database. Her heart started to beat a little faster. This was real. After an hour of careful driving, the forest suddenly fell away. She emerged onto a rocky ledge overlooking a deep, shadowy canyon. And there, halfway down the opposite slope, she saw it. Her breath caught that it was a ship, but like no ship she'd ever seen. It was sleek and organic in shape, like a smooth stone or a seed pod, but made of a pearlescent material. Now, it was a broken thing. A long, terrible scar of torn metal showed where it had clipped the canyon rim before sliding down in a path of destruction, plowing through trees and rock until it came to rest, tilted at a sickening angle. One side was completely crumpled. She could see a faint, shimmering bubble around part of the hull, a failing containment field, struggling to hold atmosphere. This was no old probe. This was a recent crash. A bad one. Protocol screamed at her now. Establish a safe distance. Do not approach. Report immediately. She brought the rover to a halt behind a large outcrop, hiding it from view of the wreck. She opened a channel to Outpost Command. The line hissed with static. The ion storms Minsu had mentioned were playing havoc with long-range comms. Outpost Command, this is Surveyor Li Jun. Do you copy? Only static replied. She tried 3 more times. The canyon walls were blocking her signal. She was on her own. She stared at the wreck. The distress beacon continued its silent cry. The shimmering containment field flickered, like a dying light bulb. Someone or something might still be in there, and if they were running out of time. Doing nothing was the safe choice. It was the logical choice for a lone geologist in a rover. Li Jun grabbed her heaviest wrench from the tool locker, attached a full canister of emergency sealant to her suit's belt, and slung her medical kit over her shoulder. She took one last look at the safe, quiet interior of her rover. Then, she opened the hatch and stepped out into the thin, cold air, and began to climb down into the canyon towards the broken ship. The climb down was slow and hard. The rocks were loose, sliding under her boots. June kept her eyes on the wreck, using it as a guide. The pearlescent metal of the ship looked strange under the orange sky. As she got closer, the damage looked worse. The tear in the hull was big enough to drive her rover through. The shimmering bubble around part of the ship was the only thing holding in air. She could see it wavering, like heat on a road. Her suit radio picked up nothing but static. The only sound was her own breathing and the crunch of her boots on the ground. She felt very small and very alone. A voice in her head, sounding a lot like Mission Controller Kim Min-soo, told her this was a terrible idea. She ignored it. She reached the edge of the bubble. It gave off a faint hum she could feel in her bones. Up close, the ship's material was smooth and cool. The tear in the hull was jagged. Inside, she could see darkness and twisted shapes. She took a deep breath and stepped through the energy field. There was a slight pressure, a pop in her ears, and then she was inside. The air was thick and warm. It smelled like ozone, burnt wiring, and something else. Something sweet and floral. Alien air. Her helmet display flashed. Atmosphere breathable? It showed high oxygen, some nitrogen, trace gases her computer didn't recognize. It wasn't toxic, but it wasn't for humans. She kept her helmet on. Her suit would filter it just in case. She clicked on her helmet light. The beam cut through the gloom. The inside of the ship was a disaster. Panels hung from the ceiling. Wires sparked. Everything was designed in flowing curves with no sharp corners. It was beautiful, even broken. And it was silent. Too silent. "Hello?" she called out, her voice sounding strange in her helmet. "Is anyone here? I am a friend. I saw your signal." No answer. She moved carefully, stepping over debris. The ship was tilted, so she had to walk on a slant. She followed the main hallway, which seemed to lead towards the center of the ship. Her light beam caught strange symbols on the walls, glowing softly. They meant nothing to her. Then, she heard it. A sound.it was a soft, chirping noise. Then another. It was coming from ahead. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She moved faster, her boots clanging on the metal floor. The hallway ended at a large, round door. It was sealed shut, but a small, clear viewport was set into it. She shone her light through it. The beam illuminated a scene that made her freeze. The room was a large cabin. The walls were lined with low, padded benches. And on those benches, huddled together, were children. They were small, maybe the size of a human 10-year-old, but slender and delicate. They had large, dark eyes that reflected her light like a forest animal's. Their skin had a soft, downy covering in shades of pale blue and gray. Some had small, feathery tufts on their heads. They wore simple, colorful tunics. They were all looking at the door, their eyes wide with terror. One of the smallest was making the chirping sound, a quiet, distressed noise. They were alien children, a whole room full of them. Standing in front of them, between the children and the door, was an adult. He was taller, with more pronounced feathery tufts that were pure white. His long robe was torn. He held his arms out wide, shielding the children. One of his arms was bent at a wrong angle. He was staring right at her light, his expression a mix of defiance and utter exhaustion. He spoke. His voice was thin and reedy, filtered through her helmet speaker. The words were not English, but the ship's computer, or maybe his own device, produced a halting translation. The voice from her speaker was flat and digital. Stay back, Predator. Harm me, but not the young ones. Please, Predator. He thought she was a threat. In her bulky environment suit with a light on her head and a wrench in her hand, she supposed she looked like one. She needed to make herself less scary. Fast. Slowly, carefully, she placed the heavy wrench on the floor. It clanged loudly, making several children flinch. She then raised her empty hands, palms forward. She pointed at the door, then at the small medical kit symbol on her chest. I am not a predator, she said, speaking slowly and clearly. I am here to help. My name is Lee Jun. I am a human. I saw your crash. The alien adult stared, his large eyes blinking slowly. The translation seemed to work. The word human made his posture change slightly. The defiant set of his shoulders softened a fraction, replaced by confusion. Human. From the outpost? The translated voice asked. Yes, June said. Can you open this door? The air in your ship is failing. We need to get you out. The adult, the teacher, she realized, looked back at the children, then at a console next to the door. He tapped it weakly with his good hand. Nothing happened. The systems are dead. The backup power, only for life support in this room. And the door seal. June looked at the door's edges. It was a manual seal, a heavy locking wheel in the center. I can open it from out here, but you must trust me. I need to get you all to safety. The teacher was silent for a long moment. The only sounds were the faint hum of the failing field outside and the soft chirps of the children. He looked at her tools, at her face behind the visor. He seemed to be weighing the danger of the known, the dying ship, against the unknown, her. Finally, he gave a slow nod. He spoke softly to the children, his own voice a gentle warble. The chirping quieted. Open, the translated voice said. June grabbed the locking wheel. It was stiff, but with a grunt of effort, she broke the seal. There was a hiss of equalizing pressure. She pulled the heavy door open. The sweet, floral smell was stronger. The teacher, Park Chul as she would later learn, took a stumbling step back, still shielding the children. Up close, she could see the pain in his eyes. His arm was clearly broken. The children stared at her. One of the older ones, a girl with thoughtful dark eyes, took a small step forward. She looked at June's helmet, then at her hands. June slowly knelt down, making herself smaller. She reached for her medical kit. She pulled out a scanner and showed it to the girl. This will not hurt, she said softly. She pointed it at Park Chul's arm and activated it. A soft blue light washed over the injury. Her screen showed a simple fracture. She could stabilize it.as she worked, injecting a pain blocker and applying a quick-setting support wrap from her kit. The tension in the room began to ease. The children saw she was helping. Park Chul let out a long, shuddering breath as the pain lessened. "The life support," he said, his translated voice urgent now. "It is only for this room. It is tied to the main battery. Maybe one more cycle of day and night. Then the air goes. The cold comes in." June finished the bandage and looked at the 14 small faces looking back at her. 14. Her 4-seat rover was 12 kilometers away, over rough terrain. The outpost was days away. A rescue ship was likely weeks away. The reality of the situation landed on her shoulders like a physical weight. She had found them, but getting them out alive was a problem she had no solution for. Not yet. June sat on the floor of the tilted cabin, her back against the wall. The children had slowly settled, though they still watched her every move. The older girl who had stepped forward earlier was sitting closest. Park Chul sat beside June, his good hand resting on his bandaged arm. "We were on a scholastic journey," Park Chul said, the translator turning his gentle warble into flat, simple words. "From Salus Prime to the observation colony on the third ring. A field trip. Something hit us. A piece of space rock, maybe. The pilot. He did not make it. I managed to get the children here and seal the door before the air left." June nodded. "Your distress call. It is short range. My people at the outpost, they did not hear it. I only heard it because I was close." Park Chul's large eyes dimmed. "Then we are not saved." "Not yet," June said. She activated the long-range comms unit on her wrist. "Surveyor Lee Jun to Outpost Command. Kim Min-soo, do you copy? Emergency." Static hissed back at her. She tried again, and again. The canyon walls and the damaged ship's metal were blocking the signal. She needed to get outside, maybe back to the ridge. She stood up. The children flinched as one. She paused, then slowly pointed to the door and her wrist calm. "I need to call my people. For help. I will come back." Park Chul looked at the children, then at her. He gave a slow, trusting nod. "We will be here." June made her way back through the torn, dark ship. Stepping through the flickering bubble of the containment field felt like leaving a tiny, fragile world. The cold air of the moon hit her suit. She began to climb, scrambling back up the rocky slope toward the ledge where she had left her rover. It was harder going up. Her muscles burned. Finally, she reached the top. She saw her rover, still hidden behind the rock. She ran to it, climbed inside, and slammed her hand on the main comms panel. "Outpost Command, this is Surveyor Lee Jun. Mayday. Do you copy? Kim Min-soo, answer please." For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, a voice, broken by waves of static, filled the cabin. "June, read you, broken. Report status." It was Min-soo. Relief washed over her. "Min-soo, I found a crash. A Celian vessel. There are survivors. 1 adult, 14 children. Their ship is dead. Life support is failing. I repeat, failing. They have less than a day of air. I need immediate evac." The static roared, then cleared slightly. "Say again, children? Confirm number." 14 juvenile Kelians. 1 injured adult. Their ship is in Canyon Sector 7. I am with them." There was a pause longer than she liked. When Min-soo's voice came back, it was grim. "June, listen. A major ion storm has moved into the sector. All ship traffic is grounded. A rescue vessel cannot launch from the outpost for at least 8 days. Do you copy? 8 days minimum. 8 days." The bottom fell out of June's stomach. "They don't have 8 hours of power, Min-soo. Maybe 20 at most. They'll freeze or suffocate. Can you extend their life support?" Min-soo asked, his professional comms training. "No. The system is integrated. I can't fix it. I don't have the parts or the knowledge." Another terrible pause. Is there any shelter nearby? A cave system? Could you move them to your rover?" "Hunker down. June looked at her small, four-seat vehicle. She looked back toward the canyon where the wreck lay. My rover fits 4, Minsu. Tops. There are 15 of them. And the temperature here at night drops 40 degrees. My rover's heater can't protect anyone outside of it. They'd freeze. The reality was a cold, hard knot in her chest. She had a rover that was useless, a wreck that was dying, and 15 lives in her hands. June. Minsu's voice was quiet now. You are a geologist. Your mission parameters do not cover this. Your priority is your own safety. Do you understand what I am saying? She understood. He was giving her a way out, the official way out. She could return to her rover, drive back to her planned survey route, wait for the storm to pass, and guide the rescue ship when it came. She would have followed protocol. And she would have left them to die. The image of the children's large, frightened eyes filled her mind. The soft chirp of the smallest one. Park Chul putting himself between them and what he thought was a monster. No, she said, her own voice surprising her with its steadiness. I do not understand that. They are children, Minsu. I am not leaving them. June, be logical. I am being logical, she interrupted. The outpost has a compatible atmosphere, right? In the main biodome. Yes, of course, but how far is it on the ground? From my position right now. A long sigh came over the comms. She could hear him calling up a map. By the most direct possible route, which goes through the Serpent's Back Pass and the Salt Flats. 120 kilometers. 120 kilometers. 5 days of hard walking for a human in a suit. For a group of delicate alien children and an injured elder? It was impossible. But it was the only number she had. The only destination. If I can get them moving, June said, thinking out loud. If I can get them to the outpost. That's the only chance, right? Before their air runs out here. June, that is a suicide march. For you and for them. The terrain is brutal. Their physiology. We don't know their endurance. The temperature swings. It's not possible. It has to be possible, she said. A plan beginning to form in her mind, wild and desperate. My rover is useless for passengers. But it is not useless. It has a tow coupling. I have my sample trailer. It's just a flatbed. But I can modify it. I can pull it. You'll kill yourself, Minsu stated flatly. Maybe, June admitted. But if I stay here, they will die for sure. I am going to try. I need you to do 2 things. Name them. First, plot the absolute best ground route from my coordinates to the outpost. Send it to my rover's nav. Look for water sources, any kind of shelter. Second, when we are closer, in maybe 4 days, you need to be ready. Have a medical team at the outer gate. Have warm shelter ready. Their air might be running out by then. Minsu was silent for a full 10 seconds. You are really doing this. I am really doing this. The storm is messing with sensors. We will lose comms soon. You will be on your own. I know. Good luck, Lee Jun. I will have the route and a team waiting. Outpost command out. The line went to static, then dead silence. June sat in the quiet rover. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. She was not a hero. She was a scientist who liked quiet. Now she was planning to walk across an alien moon, pulling a trailer with 14 children and an injured teacher. She had no other choice. That was the only thing that made it simple. She got to work. She unhitched the small, flat trailer used for rock samples. It was just a metal platform on wheels. She emptied it, throwing the sample containers into the rover. Then, she began to search the area. She used her laser cutter to fell several of the smaller, fan-like saplings. She hauled them back. Using cables and strong cord from her emergency kit, she lashed the poles to the sides of the trailer, creating low walls. It was crude, but it would keep small bodies from rolling off. She then went back to the wreck. She cut and pried loose large, curved sections of the ship's interior wall padding. She carried these heavy, soft panels back up the slope and lined the bottom of the trailer with them. It would be a hard ride, but not a bare metal one. She worked for hours. Her suit's climate control struggled with the effort. Sweat stung her eyes. She didn't stop. She was building a cart. Cart for an impossible journey. And when she looked at it, all she saw was how small it was and how many children needed to fit inside. June stood by her creation, breathing hard. The trailer now had low walls and a padded floor. It looked like a crude animal pen. It would have to do. She attached it to the back of her rover. It hitched with a solid clunk. She then gathered everything she could think of. She filled every storage compartment on the rover and the trailer with water canisters from her reclaimer, her emergency ration packs, extra power cells, and all the medical supplies she had. The sun was starting to dip, painting the sky in deeper oranges. Time was slipping away. She drove the rover, now pulling the trailer, as close to the edge of the canyon as she dared. She couldn't drive down. It was too steep. They would have to walk this first part. She suited up again and climbed back down to the wreck. The containment field seemed weaker, its hum fainter. She stepped inside. The air in the cabin felt stale already. Park Chul and the children were waiting. They looked at her with a mix of hope and fear. She knelt down to be at their level. "We have to leave," she said, her voice gentle through the translator. "The air here will be gone soon. My people cannot come in their ship because of a storm. So we must walk to them." One of the smaller children, a little boy, chirped a high, scared sound. The older girl, the one who watched everything, put a hand on his shoulder. "Walk?" Park Chul asked. His eyes went to his broken arm, then to the small, delicate forms of his students. "They are not built for such a thing. Our bones are light, for flying in high atmospheres long ago, not for long walks." "I know," June said. "I have made something to help. A cart. My vehicle will pull it. The youngest and the tired will ride. Others will walk beside. We will go at night when it is cooler. We will rest during the day. It is a long way, but it is the only way." Park Chul looked at the faces of his class. He seemed to age right in front of her. The weight of the choice was his now, too. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them and nodded. "We will walk." Getting them out of the ship was the first challenge. The hallway was dark and tilted. The children were unsteady on their feet, especially in the lighter gravity they were used to. June went first, clearing a path of debris. She had Park Chul follow right behind her. The older girl, whose name was Sua, helped at the back, guiding the others. They formed a slow, careful line. The smallest child, the boy who had chirped, his name was Jehun, clung to Park Chul's good hand. When they reached the tear in the hull, June turned and carefully picked up Jehun. He was incredibly light, like holding a bag of feathers. She passed him out through the broken metal to Park Chul. She did the same for two other very small children. The older ones she helped climb out. Finally, they all stood on the rocky ground outside their broken ship. They looked up at the vast, colored sky. They huddled together, a small flock in the gathering dusk. The reality of the open world seemed to overwhelm them. "We must climb up there," June said, pointing to the ridge. "To my vehicle." The climb up the canyon slope was slow and difficult. The children stumbled on the loose rocks. Their thin-soled shoes were not made for this. June helped where she could, lifting and guiding. Park Chul encouraged them with soft warbles. Sua was a great help, showing others where to step. By the time they all reached the rover, the first moon was rising, a small white disk in the sky. The children stared at the vehicle and the strange trailer. It looked big and mechanical to them. June opened the rover's passenger door. "Park Chul, you will ride here. You must guide me on the path. Your arm needs rest." He did not argue. He was pale with pain and effort. He climbed into the seat with a grateful sigh. Then, she turned to the children. 14 of them. She pointed to the trailer. "This will be like a moving room. You can sit. You will be safe. I will pull you with my vehicle. We need to put the smallest inside first." No one moved. They were afraid of the strange metal thing. Sua looked at June, then at the trailer. She walked forward. She put her hands on the trailer's low wall and, with a little effort, pulled herself up and over. She landed softly on the padding inside. She sat down and looked at the others. "It is stable," she said, her own voice translated for June. "It is like the sitting room on the ship, but it moves." That did it. One by one, the older children helped the younger ones climb in. Jehun was lifted up by an older boy. Soon, the trailer was full of small, quiet figures. They sat close together for warmth and comfort. There was just enough room for them all to sit, packed tightly. June looked at them in the rover's headlights. They looked so small, so fragile. Her plan seemed more insane than ever. She got into the driver's seat. Park Chul had the navigation screen open. A green line glowed, showing the route Minsu had sent. It wound through valleys and over a distant pass. "We go," she said. She put the rover in gear. It lurched forward. The trailer rattled behind it. She heard a collective gasp from the back, then silence. She drove as slowly and smoothly as she could, avoiding rocks and holes. The headlights cut a path through the strange violet forest. They traveled in silence for a long time. The only sounds were the rover's engine and the crunch of wheels on the ground. Then, a small voice came over the external speaker she had left on. "Human June." It was Sua. "Yes, Sua? What is that sound?" "The hum-churn sound." June listened. "That is the engine. It is what makes my vehicle move." "Oh," a pause. "It is a steady sound. It is not a scary sound." June felt a strange tightness in her throat. "Good," she said. "It is a good sound. It is the sound of us going to a safe place." She drove on. The night grew colder. She could see on her monitor that the temperature outside was dropping fast. The children in the open trailer would get cold. She had planned for this, but it pained her. After a few hours, she saw a good spot. A large, overhanging rock that would block the wind. She stopped the rover. "It is time to rest and get warm," she announced. She got out and went to the trailer. The children were huddled together. Their large eyes blinked up at her. She opened a storage box on the trailer and pulled out the survival blankets. They were thin, metallic sheets. She showed Sua how to unfold one. Soon, the older children were helping wrap the younger ones in the crinkly material. They looked like little silver bundles. She then took out her portable heater. It was a small unit meant for warming a tent. She placed it in the center of the trailer on a safe, flat surface and turned it on. A circle of warmth began to spread. The children made soft, appreciative chirps. They shifted closer to the warmth. June handed out water and small pieces of her ration bars. The children sniffed the food curiously. One little girl took a tiny bite, then her eyes went wide. She chirped happily and ate the rest. It wasn't their food, but it was energy. June sat on the ground beside the trailer, her back against a wheel. She was so tired. Park Chul had fallen asleep in the rover seat. She watched the children. Sua was making sure everyone had a blanket. Jehun was already asleep, leaning against an older boy who looked over the trailer wall at her. "You are not sleeping, Human June?" "Not yet," June said. "I need to watch for a little while." Sua was silent for a moment. "Thank you for the steady sound," she said quietly. Then she sat back down, wrapping her own blanket around her shoulders. June looked up at the unfamiliar stars. The journey had begun. They had survived the first night. But ahead of them lay the vast, dark shape of the mountains and the long, empty stretch of the salt flats. The real test was still to come. The march settled into a hard rhythm. They traveled when the two small moons were high, their combined light painting the landscape in soft blues and silvers. They rested during the day, hiding under rock overhangs or the sparse shade of the fan trees from the harsh sun. June walked. She walked more than she drove. The rover crawled along at a walking pace, the trailer rattling behind it. The children inside would sleep, or talk in soft warbles, or watch the strange world go by. The older ones, including Sua, took turns walking beside the trailer to stretch their legs. Their steps were light and careful, but they never complained. The real work came during the rests. June was their everything. She checked each child for sore feet or signs of cold sickness. She melted ice for water with her rover's heater. She broke her bland ration bars into tiny pieces to make them last. She applied ointment from her kit to chapped skin. Her own body screamed at her. Her shoulders were raw from the harness she sometimes used when the ground was too rough for the rover, pulling the trailer herself to save fuel. Her feet were blistered inside her boots. She existed in a fog of tiredness. On the third night, they began to climb. The path Minsu had sent led into the low mountains, through a place called the Serpent's Back Pass. The ground became a steep, rocky trail. The rover's wheels slipped on loose stones. The engine groaned with the strain. June stopped the vehicle. She knew this was coming. She attached the heavy harness to the trailer's tow bar and clipped it to the front of her suit. "I will pull for a while," she said, her voice flat with exhaustion. "The vehicle needs a rest." Park Chul, from his seat, watched with sad eyes. The children in the trailer were silent. June leaned forward into the harness and began to walk. The weight was immense. It was like dragging a building. Every step was a fight against gravity. Her boots scraped on the stones. Her breath came in ragged gasps inside her helmet. The world shrank to the next rock, the next step. The pain in her shoulders became a sharp, hot fire. She didn't know how long she walked like that. Minutes felt like hours. The line of her thoughts blurred into a single word: pull. Then, she felt the weight lessen. Not a lot, but enough to notice. She glanced back. Sua had climbed out of the trailer. She had found a length of loose cable in the trailer's storage box. She had tied one end to the side of the trailer. Now, she had the other end over her small shoulder, and she was leaning forward, walking ahead of June, pulling with all her slight might. Her face was set in concentration. Then, another child climbed out. An older boy. He didn't have a cable, so he just put his small hands on the back of the trailer and pushed. Then another, and another. Soon, 5 of the older children were out, some pulling on the cable with Sua, some pushing from behind. They were not strong. Their effort was a tiny fraction of the total weight. But it was something. It was everything. June couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. She just nodded, put her head down, and pulled with renewed strength. They were no longer a woman pulling children. They were a group moving together. They reached a flat spot as the sky began to lighten. June unhooked herself, her hands trembling. The children climbed back into the trailer, shivering in the dawn chill as she was passing out water. Jehun, the smallest, pointed a thin finger at a patch of gray-green lichen on a nearby rock. He chirped at Park Chul. Park Chul nodded. "He asks if that is the same as the silica moss on the ship. The safe one." June looked at the lichen. Her geological database identified it as non-toxic, but inert. "It is safe to eat?" she asked. "For us, yes," Park Chul said. "It is not much, but it is food. Our bodies know it." A spark of hope flickered in June's tired mind. Her rations were running dangerously low. "Show me," she said. For the next hour, as the sun warmed the rocks, the children spread out in a small, safe area. They showed her which lichen to pick, the soft, gray-green patches, not the brittle orange ones. They gathered it in little bundles. That night, instead of only ration bar crumbs, they had handfuls of the moss. The children ate it with quiet satisfaction. It was a taste of home. Later, as they set off again, Jehun was sitting at the front of the trailer, next to Sua. He was looking at June's gloved hand where it rested on the trailer wall as she walked beside them. He reached out one of his own hands, with 3 slender fingers, and very gently touched the hard material of her glove. June stopped walking and looked at him. He pulled his hand back quickly, chirping a question to Sua. Sua smiled, a small human-like expression she must have learned from watching June. "He wants to know if the hard shell is your real skin. He has never seen a being like you." June slowly pulled off her glove. She held out her bare human hand. The children in the trailer leaned forward, eyes wide. Jehun stared, then reached out again. His touch was feather-light on her skin. He felt her knuckles, her short fingernails. He chirped in amazement. "It is like the skin on our faces. Sua translated, her own curiosity clear. But stronger looking. It is just my hand, June said, her voice soft. Under the suit, I am not so different. From that moment, a barrier was gone. The children were no longer just afraid passengers. They were curious. They asked, through Sua and Park Chul, about her home, about water that fell from the sky, about why she walked when she had a vehicle. She answered as simply as she could. In return, they sang a soft, warbling song together in the trailer, a Celian traveling tune. The sound was beautiful and strange in the empty night. The journey was still brutal. The mountains were cold and the path was hard. But they were no longer just surviving the trip. They were sharing it. June's exhaustion was still there, a heavy stone in her chest. But now, wrapped around it was a new feeling. It was the feeling of 14 pairs of eyes watching her back. It was the sound of a song in the darkness. It was the sight of Sua, tying a cable over her shoulder to help pull. They were not her responsibility anymore. They were her crew, and she was their steady, humming, walking human. The mountains were behind them. Before them now stretched the salt flats, a vast white plain under the huge, colored bands of the gas giant. It looked empty and dead. The air here was drier. The wind made a low, constant moan as it swept across the crystalline surface. June stood looking at it. Her suit told her the temperature would swing wildly here. At night, it would be deadly cold with no shelter. They had to cross it in one long, terrible push. Park Chul looked at the map on the rover's screen. His feathery tufts drooped. There is no water marked here. No shelter. I know, June said, her voice rough. We have enough water for 2 days if we are careful. We must not stop for long. The cold will find us if we stop. The children were quiet as they loaded back into the trailer after a short rest. They had learned to read June's posture, the tone of her voice through the translator. They knew this part was bad. They started onto the flats. The rover's wheels crunched on the salt. It was like driving on a frozen, dusty ocean. The horizon was a flat, unbroken line. There were no landmarks. June followed the navigation line on her screen, a digital string pulling them through a white nothing. The sameness was worse than the mountains. In the mountains, every step was different. Here, every step was the same. The rover seemed to move without moving. The gas giant hung in the sky, unchanging. June's eyes ached from the glare. She walked beside the trailer to keep her blood moving. Sua walked with her for a while, but even her youthful energy was fading in the monotony. Halfway across, as the larger moon rose, the heater failed. June was checking the children when she noticed. The small, portable unit in the center of the trailer had stopped its gentle glow. The crinkly survival blankets were not enough. The children were huddled together, shivering. Their chirps were weak and thin. Power cell is dead, June muttered. She fumbled with frozen fingers for a spare. She had one left. She swapped it, but the heater only flickered and died again. The unit's internals had cracked from the constant jostling. It was gone. A cold fear, deeper than the air, gripped June. The night was getting colder by the minute. Her suit could handle it, but theirs could not. They would not survive until morning. She had to think. The rover's heater was for the cabin only. Could not warm the trailer. They could not all fit inside the rover. Her eyes landed on the rover's engine block. It was hot, always hot after running. An idea came, desperate and simple. Everyone out, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. Quickly, now. We need to make a different kind of shelter. The children, confused and cold, climbed out. They stood on the salt, shivering in a small group. June drove the rover forward a few meters, then turned it so it was sideways to the wind, created a small wall. Then, using her laser cutter, she scored a large rectangle into the hard salt crust behind the rover. She and the older children kicked at the lines until they broke a large, flat slab loose. It was like a thick white tile. They pushed the slab to lean against the side of the rover, making a small, three-sided shelter. Rover wall, salt slab, open to the front. It was tiny, but it blocked the worst of the wind. Then, She took the broken heater unit. She removed its metal casing. Using more cable, she tied the flat piece of metal directly to the rover's hot engine block. She waited a few minutes. The metal grew warm, then hot. Not enough to burn, but to radiate heat carefully. She untied it and carried the hot metal plate into the little salt brick shelter. She placed it on the ground in the center. "Do not touch it," she warned. "Just sit close." The children understood. They crowded into the shelter, pressing close together around the glowing hot plate. The radiant heat began to fill the small space. Soft, relieved chirps replaced the shivering. June did not join them. There was no room. Instead, she sat with her back against the outside of the salt slab, her own body blocking more wind. The cold seeped through her suit. She was so tired. Her mind felt slow and thick. A small shape appeared at the open side of the shelter. It was Sua. She came over and sat down right next to June, pressing her small side against June's leg. She didn't say anything. She just sat there, sharing her slight warmth. Then Jihun appeared. He sat on June's other side. Then another child. And another. They could not all fit in the shelter, so they did the next best thing. They made a shelter of their own. They formed a tight, huddled circle around June, their backs to the wind, facing the warmth leaking from the shelter. They were a living blanket. June sat very still. She could feel the faint pressure of their small bodies. She could hear their soft, steady breathing. The warmth they shared was not much, but it was real. It was the warmth of not being alone. They stayed like that for hours, passing the single hot plate back and forth from the engine to the shelter when it cooled. The night reached its deepest cold, and then, slowly, the sky began to lighten in the east. They had survived the night. As the sun rose, warming the white plain, they got moving again. Everyone was weak. The water was almost gone. June's steps were shuffling and slow. Her body was running on nothing but stubbornness. She was pulling the trailer again, the rover crawling behind to save the last of its fuel. Her vision blurred at the edges. She focused on her boots. One step, another step. Then the ground under her boots changed. The white salt gave way to dark, hard soil. She looked up. The flats were behind them. Ahead were rolling, rocky hills. And on the far horizon, so faint it could have been a cloud, was a smudge of green. The outpost biodomes. She stopped. She just stood there, staring. Datsua walked up beside her, following her gaze. "Is that it?" she asked, her voice full of awe. "Yes," June whispered. "That is it." But it was still so far. Kilometers and kilometers. Looking at it made the last of her energy drain away. The distance was too great. Her legs were made of lead. She took one more step, and her knee buckled. She stumbled, catching herself on the trailer, but she could not straighten up. The harness pulled at her raw shoulders. She was done. She fumbled with the clips of the harness, her fingers numb and clumsy. She couldn't do it. She sank to her knees in the dirt, head bowed. A small, three-fingered hand touched her glove. It was Jihun. He had climbed out of the trailer. He looked at her face, then at the harness clips. He did not understand them, but he understood her. He made a soft, worried sound. Dasua looked from June to the distant smudge of green. Her face, usually so calm, set into a look of determination. She walked to the front of the trailer. She picked up the loose end of the pull cable June had dropped. She put it over her shoulder, just as she had in the mountains. She leaned forward. She did not have the strength to move it, not alone. But then another older child came. He picked up another cable, then another. Soon, 4 of the oldest children had cables over their shoulders, facing the far-off green smudge. The others, including Jihun, went to the back of the trailer. They put their small hands on it. Datsua looked back at the others. She chirped one clear word. A Celian word June did not know, but its meaning was clear. Pull. The children strained. The trailer creaked, and then it began to move. It inched forward, then another inch. Their steps were tiny, their strength was small, but it was combined. The trailer rolled slowly, steadily, away from the salt flats, towards home. June knelt in the dirt, watching them. Her tears felt hot on her cold cheeks. She tried to stand, to help, but her body would not obey. Park Chul opened the rover door. He walked over to her, his own steps slow. He did not have the strength to lift her. Instead, he sat down on the ground beside her. Together, they watched their class, their children, pull the cart carrying their youngest across the last stretch of an alien world. It was the slowest, most beautiful procession June had ever seen. The children pulled the trailer for nearly a kilometer. Their progress was achingly slow, a crawl across the rocky ground. They did not stop. They did not look back. Their small bodies were bent forward against the weight, a line of determination against the vast landscape. June, from where she still knelt, could see their shoulders shaking with effort. She knew she couldn't stay there. She forced herself to her feet, a wave of dizziness making the world tilt. Park Chul steadied her with his good hand. She gave him a nod, a silent thank you, and then she began to walk. Not to take over the pull, she knew with a painful clarity that this was their burden to finish, but to walk beside them. She fell into step next to Sua, who had the lead cable biting into her slender shoulder. June didn't speak. She just walked. Her presence, she hoped, was enough. A high-pitched whine cut through the air. It was a sound that didn't belong. The children faltered, looking up, frightened. From behind a low hill, two vehicles shot into view. They were human ground crawlers, six-wheeled and painted in the gray and green of frontier outpost security. They skidded to a halt in a cloud of dust. Doors flew open. Men and women in environment suits jumped out, medical symbols on their arms. The rescue team had come out to meet them. For a moment, everyone froze. The children stared at the new humans, their large eyes wide with a fresh wave of fear. The rescue team stared back, their professional masks slipping into pure shock. Their scanners had told them to expect a lone human and 15 Kelians. They were not prepared for what they saw. They saw a group of emaciated alien children, covered in dust, harnessed like beasts of burden to a makeshift cart. They saw the cart itself, a crude thing of lashed poles and padded walls, holding the very smallest children who peered out silently. They saw an elderly Celian, injured, leaning against a battered rover. And they saw Li Jun, standing beside a child at the front of this strange procession. Jun's suit was scratched and stained. Her face behind the visor was gaunt, smudged with dirt and exhaustion. One of the medics, a woman, was the first to move. She took a step forward, her hands up in a peaceful gesture. Li Jun. Her voice came over the open channel. Yes, June croaked. The medic's eyes went to the children on the cables. Are they pulling that? Yes, June said again, her voice breaking. They are. That single word seemed to break the spell. The medical team surged into action, but gently, slowly. They did not rush to take the cables. Instead, they walked up to the children at the front. The lead medic knelt down in front of Sua. You are very strong, the medic said, her voice soft. You can stop now. We are here to help. Sua looked at June. June gave a small, tired nod. It's okay. These are my people. They are safe. Sua's shoulders slumped. She let the cable drop from her raw skin. The other children did the same. They stood there, trembling not from cold now, but from the sudden release of tension they had held for days. The medics moved with efficient care. They gently lifted the children from the trailer, wrapping them in warm, insulated blankets. They checked pulses, scanned for injury, offered sips of warm, sweet liquid from small bottles. They spoke in calm, soothing tones, even though their words were not understood. June watched it all happen as if from a great distance. Someone put a blanket around her shoulders. Someone else was talking to her, asking her questions. She heard her own voice answering, flat and automatic. The teacher's arm is broken. The smallest one is named Jihun. They can eat the gray lichen. We ran out of water this morning. She saw Park Chul being carefully helped into one of the crawlers. She saw Jihun, wrapped like a cocoon, being carried by a medic, his head resting on her shoulder. He was looking back, his eyes searching until they found June. He gave a tiny, weak chirp. Then, a familiar figure walked towards her through the bustle. It was Kim Min-soo. He wasn't in a suit. He was in his controller's uniform, having come out in the sealed vehicle. His calm face was etched with something she had never seen there before. A deep, profound respect. "June," he said. "Min-soo, you got my route." "We did. The storm cleared enough for short-range scans a few hours ago. We saw your heat signatures. And then we saw you weren't moving. We came as fast as we could." He looked past her at the trailer, at the marks in the dirt where small feet had dug in to pull. "The security cameras on the lead crawler, they've been recording since we left the outpost perimeter. They recorded all of this." June didn't care about cameras. The children, dehydrated, exhausted, minor scrapes, but stable. "They'll be fine. They are incredibly tough." He paused. "You are not fine. You need to come to the medical bay now." June let herself be led to the second crawler. As she climbed in, she took one last look back. The trailer sat abandoned on the rocky ground, a strange monument to their journey. The medics were loading the last of the children into the other vehicle. The scene was being documented, but she didn't see that. She only saw that they were safe. The steady hum of the crawler's engine started, and it was the last sound she heard before a deep, black sleep pulled her under. She woke up in the outpost infirmary. The lights were soft. Her body felt clean, and she was wearing a soft medical gown. And 4 was in her arm. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. Then a nurse noticed she was awake. "Welcome back," the nurse said with a smile. "You've been asleep for 14 hours. The children, Park Chul." June's voice was a dry whisper. "The Keelians? They're in the next wing, in a specially prepared room with their own atmosphere. They are all resting comfortably. They've been asking for you, asking for her." The words felt strange. Over the next day, as June drank broth and felt strength slowly return, the world outside her room began to change. Min-soo visited, bringing a data pad. "You should see this," he said quietly. He played a video. It was the security footage. It showed the moment the crawlers crested the hill. The shaky, zoomed-in image of the children pulling the cart. The silent, stunned reaction of the medics. The image of June, standing like a ghost beside Sua. It had been edited with simple text. "Human surveyor Lee June and the Celian children after a 120 kilometers trek. Outpost 7. It was shared on the internal network," Min-soo said. "But someone forwarded it to a Celian communications buoy before the storm fully died down. It's gone everywhere, June. The Celian news channels, their social streams. They are calling it the Walk of the Guiding Route." June shook her head, pushing the pad away. "No. It was the only thing to do." "To them," Min-soo said, his voice gentle, "it was everything. To a species that values teachers and community above all, you didn't just save a class. You became their teacher. You walked with them. You let them pull when you couldn't. That story, it's rewriting what they think about humans in this sector." June didn't want a new story. She just wanted to see if Jihun was okay. She wanted to know if Sua's shoulder was healing. Later, she was allowed to visit them. She stood in the observation room, looking through a large window into their recovery suite. The air inside was hazy with their preferred humidity. The children were resting on soft pads, their color already looking better. Park Chul sat among them, his arm in a proper cast. He saw her and raised his good hand in greeting. Then Jihun saw her. He scrambled up and came to the window. He placed his small hand flat against the glass. June matched it with her own. He chirped, the sound muffled but happy. Sua joined him. She looked at June, then did something that made June's breath catch. She placed her hand over her heart, then extended it, palm open, towards June. It was a Celian gesture, one June had seen Park Chul use. A gesture of deep gratitude, from student to teacher. June, her eyes stinging, didn't know the correct response, so she just did the same. Hand over her own human heart, Then, outstretched, she was no longer just Li Jun, xenogeologist. She was something else now. And as she looked at the children safe and warm on the other side of the glass, she found she didn't mind the new title at all. A week passed. The outpost buzzed with a strange, new energy. Jun's small room in the residential wing felt like the only quiet place left. She could walk now without her legs trembling. The raw marks on her shoulders were fading to scars. The physical part was healing. The rest was harder. People looked at her differently in the mess hall. Their glances were not unkind. They were looks of awe, of curiosity. She heard the words they didn't say out loud. That's her. The one who walked with the aliens. She kept her head down and ate her food quickly. Kim Min-soo found her there one evening. They're leaving tomorrow, he said, sitting down across from her. The Keelians. A ship from their homeworld is here to take them back. June nodded, pushing a piece of vegetable around her plate. She had known this day would come. It was the right thing. They needed to go home. There's a small departure ceremony, Min-soo continued carefully. At the main airlock. Park Chul asked if you would be there. Of course, June said. Her voice was quiet. The next morning, she put on a clean, standard-issue jumpsuit. She made her way to the main docking ring. She was surprised by the crowd. It wasn't just outpost staff. There were Keelians, 2 diplomats and officials who had arrived on the retrieval ship. They were tall and graceful, their feathery tufts in elaborate arrangements. They spoke in soft, melodic warbles. Then she saw her children. They were gathered in a neat group near the airlock door, wearing simple, new tunics. They looked healthy. Their eyes were bright. Park Chul stood with them, his broken arm in a sleek, white cast. When he saw June, his whole face seemed to light up. He spoke, and his translator pendant voiced the words. Li Jun, you came. The children turned as one. A wave of soft chirps and warbles greeted her.
Sua smiled.
Jehun waved a shy, 3-fingered hand. Before June could say anything, one of the Celian officials, a being with silver tufts, stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. The official spoke, and a translator broadcast the words for all the humans to hear. We are here to honor a promise made across stars, the translated voice said, smooth and formal, and to honor the one who kept it. The official turned its large, dark eyes to June. Li Jun of humanity. The Celian people have a story, one of our oldest. It tells of the guiding route, the one who finds the lost saplings and leads them home through the storm, not by carrying them, but by teaching them how to walk. This title is given only to our greatest teachers. It has never been given to an outsider. The official paused, letting the weight of the words settle. June felt her face grow warm. She wanted to disappear into the floor. By the witness of Senior Park Chul, the official continued, and by the testimony of the young ones themselves, we have seen a guiding route walk among us. You did not just save lives. You honored their spirits. You showed them their own strength. For this, our species owes you a debt that cannot be measured in credits or treaties. The official made a gesture. Another Celian brought forward a small, dark wood box. The official opened it. Inside, on a bed of soft cloth, was a simple pin. It was made of a smooth, gray stone, shaped like a single, strong root curving around a small, shining gem that looked like a dewdrop. Will you accept this? The official asked. Every eye was on her. The human onlookers held their breath. June looked past the pin. She looked at Park Chul, who gave a slow, approving nod. She looked at the children. Sua was standing very straight, pride shining in her eyes. Jehun was nodding eagerly, as if telling her to say yes. June understood then. This wasn't for her. This was for them. It was their way of making the story complete, of saying thank you in the only way their whole culture would understand. I am honored, June said, her voice clear in the quiet room. I accept. The official took the pin from the box. With great care, they fastened it to the front of June's plain jumpsuit. The stone felt cool against her chest. The crowd, both human and Celian, made a soft sound, a human murmur of respect mixed with a Celian harmonic warble of approval. The formal part was over. The officials began to move towards the airlock, talking among themselves. The moment the crowd loosened, the children broke from their group and rushed toward June. They surrounded her, their chirps and questions coming fast. She knelt down, and they pressed close. Jihun touched the pin on her chest with a gentle finger. "It is pretty," his translated voice said. "It is because of you," June said. Datsua looked at her. "Will you come and see our home one day?" "I would like that very much," June said, and she meant it. Park Chul came over last. The children, sensing this was their moment, stepped back a little. "I will teach them of this," Park Chul said, his eyes moist. "Of the human who was a root. It will be in their lessons forever." "Teach them to be brave," June said. "They already are. They learned it from a good teacher," he replied. He placed his good hand over his heart, then extended it to her. She did the same. Then, with final nods, he gently herded the children towards the waiting airlock. They walked in a line, just like they had on the moon. At the door, each one turned and made the same gesture, hand over heart, then outstretched. One by one, until the last, Jihun, had disappeared inside. The airlock door sealed with a deep thud. June stood there for a long moment, her hand still over the cool stone pin. The crowd began to drift away. Minsu walked up and stood beside her, looking at the closed door. "Quite a thing," he said softly. "Yeah," June whispered. "What do you do now?" he asked. "You're the most famous human in the sector. The Keelians are asking for you to visit. The media wants interviews. The brass upstairs wants to put you in a parade." June thought about it. She thought about the long, quiet walk, the sound of the rover's engine, the feeling of small hands pushing the cart, the shared warmth in a shelter of salt. She thought about the quiet of her geology lab, the weight of a rock sample in her hand. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. "I don't know," she said, and it was the truth. "But I don't think I want a parade." Minsu smiled. "Didn't think so. The offer for a new survey is always open. A different moon, maybe. Nice and quiet." June looked down at the pin on her chest. The guiding route. It wasn't a title she had wanted, but it was one she had earned. It meant she was connected now to a whole species, to a story bigger than herself. She couldn't just go back to being only a geologist. The silence wouldn't feel the same. "Maybe," she said, "but not yet." She turned and walked away from the airlock, Minsu falling into step beside her. As they moved through the corridors of the outpost, some people still glanced at the pin on her jumpsuit. But for the first time, June didn't mind. The weight of it was not heavy. It was a reminder. She had set out to take some rock samples. She had found a broken ship. She had made a choice to not look away. And that simple, human choice had led her here. She wasn't a hero. She was just a person who hadn't wanted to hear children crying in the dark. And somehow, in this vast and complicated sector, that had turned out to be the most important thing of all.